Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our next session of the day on Territorial Army role and opportunities. Please join me in welcoming on stage our esteemed panelists for this session, Brigadier Satish Dahiya, Commander TA Group Headquarters Northern Command, Colonel Deepak Kumar, Deputy Commander TA Group Headquarters Western Command, Maj Jai Upadhyay, IT Expert, Honorary Major Deepak Rao, Specialist Close Quarter Battle. And to moderate the session, I'd like to invite on stage Major General S.S. Patil, Additional Director General, Territorial Army. Major General Patil was commissioned in 11 Jacriff on 16 December 1989, who, however, has permanently been absorbed in the newly formed Ladakh Scouts Regiment. Major General Patil has served in all terrains across the country, both in pivot and strike formations. The General Officer is presently tenating the appointment of ADG Territorial Army. Let's welcome them all with a huge round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I know our session is at the most awkward time. The previous session was extremely interesting, wherein Atmanirbhar Bharat got discussed, and perhaps this would have been the highlight of the entire fest. And it is also the lunch time. That notwithstanding, this audience here, we'll be very happy to talk about the Territorial Army, the role and its opportunities. As introduced, I am Major General S.S. Patil, and I, on behalf of the Territorial Army and the DGTA, thank the USI for giving us an opportunity to talk about ourselves and spread awareness about what the Territorial Army is all about. During this session, I will try with my team to draw attention to what all the TA is actually doing and what all opportunities which are available for its exploitation towards nation building. Before I call the panelists, I would like to briefly orientate the audience with the organization of what is TA. Flashed on the screen, you will see that the Territorial Army was the first Indian army that was brought into being by an act of parliament. That means to say, the rest of the regular army was a transformation from the British army to the Indian army, whereas the Territorial Army was the first creation of Free India through an act of parliament on 9th of October, and it came into being in 1949. The concept of the Territorial Army was to actually gainfully employ the able-bodied youth as also people in the middle age bracket and give them an opportunity to serve in the army wearing the uniform. Thus, we would always have a constantly available trained set of manpower in the civil domain to don the uniform and become a part of the regular army when needed, at short notice. The role of the Territorial Army is to relieve the regular army from its vigorous duties and take on the secondary nature of regular army duties, as also to provide aid to civil authorities whenever needed. That means to say, the Territorial Army can be employed in the entire spectrum of aid to civil authorities as well as a full involvement in conflict. And since the conception, it has participated in numerous wars, be it 62, 71, of Parakram, of Vijay, and consequently in the J&K and Northeast throughout the last 10 to 15 years in a very active manner. Presently, the organization is headed by a Lieutenant General who is the DGTA. I am the ADGTA, a Major General. We have presence in all the commands in the group headquarters, in all the commands of the Indian Army. And we have battalions which are serving on the entire length and breadth of the country, right from Ladakh to the Andaman Nicobars, from north to south, and from the run of Kutch onto the west to the extreme Indian borders onto the east. We have two components. One is a non-departmental component. That is the component which is funded by the Ministry of Defense. And second component is the departmental component. That means that component which is funded by various departments or the states, as flashed on the screen. The entire gamut of embodiment, employment, both in the departmental and the non-departmental schemes, will be covered by the various panelists who are going to speak after me. We have with us a panel of extremely talented and experienced officers. First amongst them is Brigadier Satish Dahiya, Sena Medal. He is an infantry officer with approximately 30 years of service, and he has vast military experience in various operational terrains across the breadth of our country. He is presently serving as a group commander of the TA in Northern Command, and I must say approximately 40 to 50% of the TA units are presently in Northern Command. He will be talking about the non-departmental component. Thereafter, we also have Colonel Deepak Kumar, who is the Deputy GOC of Western Command Group Headquarters. He is a Territorial Army officer. That means an officer who was commissioned into the Territorial Army, while Brigadier Dahiya and others were commissioned into regular army. So the TA has components both from the Territorial Army as well as from the regular army in terms of officer component goes. Colonel Deepak has again varied experience in various times of units in the non-departmental, that means the oil sector, the railways, the eco task forces, etc. And he will be talking about the non-departmental vertical of the Territorial Army. Our third speaker in the panelists is Honorary Commissioned Major Deepak Rao. He is a specialist and a sports medicine doctor. He has been training troops both of Indian Army, Territorial Army, as well as paramilitary forces in modern day unarmed combat. And his contribution in the last 25 years has been vast. His efforts, his contributions have been recognized by the Government of India by giving him an honorary commission which is special to the Territorial Army. And towards the end, our fourth panelist, Maj Jai Upadhyay. He is a young entrepreneur turned into a TA commissioned officer who has an equally vibrant second profession which he pursues in the field of AI, drones and robotics. In fact, he has worked with Lockheed Martin and other such important departments outside the country also. He will be talking about what is the way ahead in terms of what would be the contribution or what could be the contribution of the Territorial Army in terms of developing niche and specialist technology for contributing towards our quest into transformation of Atmanirbhar and well-endowed, technologically sound army. So all these four speakers are going to talk one by one, and it will be my endeavor thereafter to control the question-answer session in a manner that we get the best out of these panelists. Now I hand you over to Brigadier Satish Dahiya.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, General Patel, for introducing Territorial Army to the distinguished audience. As elucidated by the journal, the roots of Territorial Army can be traced back to the ancient times and was need-based. Territorial Army in the present form is the outcome of evolution since 1948, wherein it commenced its journey from all arms and has now stabilized as a need-based, tailor-made organization. Taking a world scan, almost all major countries of the world follow the concept of reservist, and the countries to include are India, UK, and Malaysia, who call them as the territorial forces. In US, the National Guards, a reserve force, is employed for all hazards, homeland security emergencies, and overseas military missions. The British Reserve consists of two main components, that is regular and the voluntary reserve force. The French government in 1999 created a separate reserve component, the Operational Reserve or the Citizens Reserve, which is more akin to the Territorial Army. As regards to China, they follow the system of conscripts and have a reserve of approximately 6 lakh strength. Thus, all developed countries maintain large reserve forces in support of their regular army, ensuring cost-effective security apparatus. Taking forward the discussion on non-departmental territorial units, these units are open to civilian volunteers from all walks of life. So any individual from 22 to 42 years of age can become part of the TA, including students, professionals, and self-employed individuals. These units are funded by MOD, receive military training, and can be called upon to assist the regular army in times of need. The non-departmental units presently consist of infantry, territorial army units, and engineer TA regiments. Initially, 10 infantry battalions were raised in 1948 post-sanction of the Act. Subsequently, based on the operational need, additional 22 infantry battalions were raised up to 2001. To counter the increased terrorist activities in J&K and insurgencies northeast, 10 additional infantry battalions, TA, were raised between year 2003 and 05 based on the Sons of Soil concept. The recruitment of troops is done from their geographical area of deployment and are entrusted with the responsibility to secure their society. Presently, there are a total of 46 departmental TA units raised and deployed across the length and breadth of the country, translating to almost 36,000 soldiers. An important aspect to highlight here is that a TA soldier, when disembodied, he is a total civilian and only called for 2 months of annual training camp, thus an opportunity to him to pursue his second career as also remain current in primary profession. Gentlemen, the stated role of non-departmental units of Territorial Army is to relieve regular army of static duties and to aid civil authority in dealing with natural calamities as and when required. Taking the discussion forward, I would like to deliberate upon the infantry battalions now. Presently, there are a total of 43, having their permanent locations all across the country, and especially the states where the military presence is minimal or there's no military presence. Though all the infantry battalions are affiliated to certain regiments as the regular battalions, however, unlike them, their recruitment is carried out on All India All Class, which is further divided into 4 zones. These units are commanded by the officers from the regular army, that is infantry, who are fairly senior and experienced. An area of officers, JCOs and NCOs of regular army are also posted to these units for bringing in the ethos and culture of regular army. And this particular composition is from 3% to 8% in all the battalions. Besides participating in all the wars fought post-independence, there are numerous achievements and accolades accrued by these units, and by virtue of being citizens' army, they are able to connect with the local administration and contribute immensely towards the nation building. They have been flag bearers of perception management activities in J&K and Northeast. Their major contribution include creation of conducive environment, improvement in security situations, bringing in winds of change, involvement of youth in sports activities in J&K, change of poster boy, that is from Burhan Wani to Nazir Wani in Kashmir, and women empowerment efforts in the form of Flag Woman of Kupwara. And here I would like to say that this movement of flag actually started from the J&K. All this have tilted the balance and focus from merely terrorism to a prosperous Naya Kashmir. You will be seeing all this on the slides in form of certain photographs. And their active involvement in resolving ethnic disputes have been instrumental in ensuring a peaceful society. Further protection to important railway mega projects and border road projects in Northeast states is testimonial to their endeavor towards maintaining peace and harmony. Some glimpses of the TA, of course, will be visible on the slides. So these battalions also take part and have been part of all security exercises in preparation for the conventional operations as per varied terrain and the battlefield conditions obtaining. Now the newest addition to the non-departmental units are the 3 engineer regiments, tailor-made organization. They were raised in 2015 owing to recurring nature of work and maintenance of LC fence, which was erected later on, much later, of the western border. The soldiers are local from J&K and are best suited for such a task. These engineer regiment have also provided stability to the families in J&K, along with preparing a skilled reserve available to the nation during the time of peace and war. Here, I would like to pose a question to the distinguished audience. Is Territorial Army the best suited for nation building? Such a vast resource, such a vast number, and if yes, then how do you go forward? With multi-faced challenges to the country, Territorial Army can emerge as a great asset with reasonably trained force with inherent flexibility to switch between military and the civil life as per the need of hour. The force is like an elastic, which can expand or contract as per the operational need with the least burden to the exchequer. In other words, Territorial Army soldier can be termed as an ideal citizen who is well-trained, disciplined, and are self-motivated to take bigger role in the society. The Territorial Army can be considered for a greater role at both a strategic and the national level. The contribution of Territorial Army in perception management in CI/CT environment is of immense value in connecting with the alienated masses. The glimpses actually were shown to you on the slides. A few aspects recommended for including in the Territorial Army role could be: as discussed earlier, Territorial Army, by virtue of its citizens' character, could provide right solution of tiazation of logistics for the regular army, which is huge in number. Availability, erstwhile general hospitals TA, could have supplemented the medical effort of the nation during recently experienced COVID pandemic, and we could consider raising such hubs again. Since they are dedicated, disciplined, and trained, their participation and involvement in each fabric of society, especially in border areas, can be a major force multiplier for the nation. Territorial Army units are recruited based on zones. As I mentioned earlier, they are from the remotest of the areas and in the areas where the military presence is little, and have a pan-India presence. Through their permanent location in states, these units can be, even being disembodied at these locations, can embody troops at the shortest notice and can be the first responder towards any disaster that develops. Territorial Army can also be utilized to enroll doctors, nurses working in private sector who during the times of crisis can be embodied for setting up camps and assist the government in providing medical care to the needy, both domestically as also to cater for overseas deployment contingencies as had been done during Nepal earthquake. Territorial Army can also assist in developing character, comradeship, discipline, and ideals of selfless service amongst students by enrolling government and private school teachers as JCOs, NCOs who are only part-time and can proliferate nationalism to each and every government/private school of the country. Territorial Army is also involved in numerous environmental projects, and their contributions will be covered by Colonel Deepak. To conclude, I strongly feel that this concept and the force has immense potential to safeguard the territorial integrity of our nation and must be fully utilized to create a strong force. Here I am reminded of a quote. The Territorial Army is the unsung hero of our nation's defense, providing a vital reserve of dedicated individuals ready to serve when called upon. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon and Jai Hind to all of you present here. I, Colonel Deepak Kumar, a serving Territorial Army officer, today feel privileged to speak on departmental TA vertical, its role and opportunities, which is quite prevalent since time immemorial. On the concept of adaptability for survival of a society through war fighting measures. As we are now aware that Territorial Army has got its two major verticals, that is non-departmental Territorial Army units and departmental TA units, for which the aspects have been widely covered by my previous panelist, Brigadier Satish Dahiya. I shall be covering the other vertical of Territorial Army, that is the departmental TA units. Here my hands-on exposure as a terrier helps me in articulating the challenges of departmental TA, comprising railway engineering regiments, oil sector units, and ecological task forces. Also, the Ganga task force raised for rejuvenation of river Ganga. Departmental TA units, as the name suggests, these departmental TA units are raised on the behest of various departments, ministries, funded by the departments other than the Ministry of Defence. The manpower component is from the concerned department, ministries, and public sector units. These are the book deputies units. The expenditure incurred on the initial raising and subsequent maintenance is also borne by the respective funding agencies. About the oil sector units, the Assam agitation of 1980 resulted in a colossal loss of oil production, estimated at over rupees 5,000 crore during 1981 and 82. The combat engineer regiments were deployed to take over the oil and gas installations to maintain the production. Raising of the oil sector units was the result of the lessons learned during this process. Raising of the units was proposed and initiated by the then Ministry of Petroleum, Chemical and Fertilizer for raising of oil sector TA units. Separately for the field of oil industry, that is exploration, refinery and pipelines. The oil sector units are funded by the public sector units and controlled by the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The trade-wise manpower is drawn from the public sector units. The nucleus component is drawn from the regular army, who is responsible for the command, control, and training of oil sector public sector units. The departmental employees are embodied in the sense they are there for the services for 30 days of carrying out their annual training camp. Other than the service embodiment, for additional training and exercises if it is required. These units also ensure the productions, pumping and running of oil refineries and aviation fuel, LPG during emergency and strikes. Together, they look after downstream, upstream, and all the operations including marketing of the oil products. The Railway Engineer Regiment TA. The first Railway Engineer Regiment was raised in 1949 to ensure the uninterrupted rail communication for augmenting the rail network during the emergencies and strike. Till 1974, there were 15 railway engineer regiments and these were functional. And recently these forces have been right-sized and optimized on account of the modernization of the railway infrastructure and communication linkage in the country. The railway TA comprises of nucleus strengths drawn from the regular army, who is responsible from the command, control and training of the railway personals. The departmental employees are also embodied for 30 days of annual training camps, other than the service embodiment for additional training and exercise if required. Now I briefly touch upon the genesis of raising of the ecological task forces. Gentlemen, in the 1980s, there was large-scale deforestation in Mussoorie, and this was rampant with stone quarrying and timber smuggling. The problem was noticed by then the Prime Minister and by Dr. Norman Borlaug. He was a famous agronomist and a Nobel laureate, to treat the severely degraded hills of Mussoorie, which is in Uttarakhand, as a pilot project by enrolling the ex-servicemen of the Indian Army for tackling the ecological degradation on war footing. Following the success of this project, this was replicated, and today Territorial Army has got 10 ecological task forces carrying out afforestation in difficult, degraded, and the most inhospitable terrain in various parts of the country, which include Dehradun and Pithauragarh in Uttarakhand, Jaisalmer in Rajasthan, Samba in Jammu and Kashmir, Kufri in Himachal Pradesh, Bhatti mines in New Delhi, Tezpur and Kokrajhar in Assam, Aurangabad in Maharashtra, and Prayagraj. Ecological task forces are raised in tripartite model between the state government, central governments, and the army. These units have so far achieved a target of planting across 9 crore saplings in approximately 92,000 hectares of land across the country. These units provide employment to the ex-servicemen, and since 2018, the employment is also open to the women candidates who are retirees from the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change and State Forest Department. Today, ecological task forces are making substantial contribution aimed at achieving national carbon sink targets and restoration and protection of the biodiversity. Gentlemen, we also have the Composite Ecological Task Force, which was raised as pilot project for the rejuvenation of River Ganga under the flagship of National Mission for Clean Ganga in 3 important cities of Uttar Pradesh, that is the Prayagraj, Kanpur, and Varanasi. The Ganga Task Force has been working with the twin objectives of effective pollution abatement as well as conservation and rejuvenation of River Ganga. This task force acts as a force multiplier to the national mission in its mandated role and tasks. That is the afforestation to check the soil erosion, monitoring the flow of effluents in the river, protection of biodiversity of endangered species, and conduct the mass awareness campaigns. Now, I'll cover the wider aspect of the future opportunities in the departmental TA units. Considering the success of ecological TA battalions and the Ganga Task Force, units in successfully tackling the ecology and environment-related issues today, all states pan-India are desirous to raise at least one ecological task force for their respective states by enrolling the disciplined and dedicated ex-servicemen of the Indian Army. Further propelled by the success of pilot project of Ganga Task Force, more river rejuvenation task force akin to existing Ganga Task Force could be raised for rejuvenating river health besides contributing to global efforts of climate change mitigation, carbon sinks target, and carbon sequestration targets. Some other areas of developing similar task force include protections and conservation of the wildlife, upgradations the skills and infrastructure of fisheries department, greening of the areas astride the national highways are also the fascinating possibilities for the departmental TA units. Such projects would be jointly undertaken by the parent department and Territorial Army, also the MOD in a tripartite model. I will just briefly touch upon the way ahead for the departmental TA units now. The primary reason for the success of ecological task forces or the departmental TA remains the hallmark of dedicated discipline and primarily workforce comprising of the ex-servicemen of the Indian Army. Thus, TA remain alive to the necessity to combat environment degradation and is praised to contribute towards ecological restoration through a range of activities involving afforestation, raising the water tables, soil binding, contribution in cleaning and maintaining the health of the rivers, conserving the wildlife, and greening national highways, as well as preserving the wildlife in times to come. The existing possibilities converge onto our final aim of meaningful aligning towards nation building and developing a cleaner and a greener Bharat. Thank you so much. May I request Major Deepak Rao to come on the stage, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to be here talking to you today. I'm grateful to the other panelists who have enlightened about the various functions of the outstanding force of Territorial Army. I am an honorary officer. I was given honorary rank by the President of India and pipped by the Army Chief General V.K. Singh for my outstanding contribution in close quarter battle. Now, close quarter battle is a relatively new subject that cropped up since Kargil. In Kargil, the army and the armed forces saw the enemy engage with them at close quarters, that is just up to 30 yards. So you could actually see the enemy right in front of you. And newer methodologies were required to tackle the enemy at such close quarters. At that time, I happened to be at the right place at the right time. And here I am going to tell you about my journey with the army and how I donned the uniform after 20 years of serving the army as a civilian. So let's start right at the beginning. I was a doctor by profession. I was always appreciative of the Indian Army, and I always wanted to be part of the Indian Army. Why? Because Indian Army always symbolified duty, it symbolified ethos and ethics, it symbolified patriotism, and it symbolified adventure. And that is the reason why I was always enamored by the Indian Army. But destiny had taken me to become a doctor. But yet there was a desire to do something for the Indian Army. I got married to another doctor, Dr. Seema Rao, and she was the daughter of a freedom fighter. Me and her both were very, very, very desirous of doing something related to the army. And we decided that we would do something in a hobby that we were pursuing, and that hobby was martial arts. So both of us, I was 22 and she was 18, both of us had spent more than 5 years and 10 years in martial arts, and we were quite good at it. We decided that we will use our martial arts expertise to serve the country. So yes, like ADG introduced me as an unarmed combat expert, I am an unarmed combat expert, but I have served the army as a close quarter battle specialist. And that is why I have been granted the rank. So I am going to tell you how that happened. We came across various skills in martial arts, and we came across Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune. We studied Bruce Lee's art, which is called Jeet Kune, and we got certified in it. And this art was not available in India at that time. Therefore, we wrote to the Army Chief, the Naval Chief, the Air Chief, the DG BSF, the DG NSG, that we have this kind of expertise and we are willing to give this expertise to the armed forces. This was, I'm talking of 1994, 1996. All of them agreed, and all of a sudden, we found ourselves in the middle of people donning the uniform, the armed forces. We spent 6 weeks at Para Center, we spent 6 weeks training the Marine Commandos, we spent 6 weeks training National Security Guard, we spent 6 weeks training BSF at BSF Academy. And we found ourselves all of a sudden very, very, very busy, because every time we finished training a particular force or a particular institution, there would be more institutions inviting us, more forces calling us over. And unknowingly, what started off as a small way of doing something for the armed forces became a full-time career. 10 months in a year, we would be out at age 24, and my wife being age 21. and we would be visiting various force locations, and we would be training them in unarmed combat. Now we got the opportunity to learn shooting, and we learned to shoot at various ranges in various forces. In a span of about few years, 5 years or so, we had fired 1 lakh rounds, and we had become experts dealing with different type of assault rifles used by different forces. And we started thinking, कि at close quarters, when the enemy is right in front of you, you don't really need to aim like this. And we devised a new method of shooting, which went for patent, which was called reflex shooting, RAW method. A few forces invited us because they were very keen to see what this new method was. And all of a sudden, we found ourselves visiting various forces to teach reflex shooting. Now, unarmed combat had taken the back seat and reflex shooting had taken the front seat. 10 years passed like this. Thereafter, a lot of forces told us that they are interested in coordinated shooting, where the whole team shoots together. Nobody is interested in one-man shooting because people go in small squads and they go in small groups and they fight. So we started working on that. Coordinated shooting, team shooting, squad shooting. And that became a hit again. The next 2 years we spent going to various para units, various commando units, various paramilitary forces, and we spread our expertise of shooting and team tactics. By that time, close quarter battle had become in demand, and we realized that all the skills and all the various training modules that we were imparting that fell into the gamut of close quarter battle. So we started now being known as close quarter battle specialists. This was about 15 years. 15 years, we were not doing medicine, but we were going 10 months a year, 10 months every year to various units. And yes, we did not take any compensation for this other than our travel. So 15 years went by. In those 15 years, a lot of things happened. I dislocated my knee in one assignment. I had a very bad time. I was down in bed for about 10 months. After 10 months, I recovered. I started limping around for about a year. But I continued my work. Because it was giving me a lot of satisfaction being with the uniformed forces. Yes, my wife also was involved with me in the same training. After that, I had a slip disc. By then I had become about 35. And the slip disc kept me in bed for another year and a half. But when I recovered, again I was back on my toes. Going back to shooting, going back to training, going back to accepting the various invitations. The high point of our life was when 2 special forces invited us to train them in a joint exercise. And word spread to Army headquarters. And Army headquarters began taking an interest in our work, and we sent all our work, all our credentials, all our research to the Chief of Army Staff. And in 2001, General Padmanabhan gave us the first Army Chief citation. That was a very high point in our life because it endorsed that we were doing good work for the forces. 2005, General J.J. Singh gave us a second Army Chief citation. And 2010, General V.K. Singh gave us a third Army Chief citation. By then, around 2007, General Deepak Kapoor, as Army Commander, Northern Command, invited us to modernize close quarter battle at the battle schools in J&K. That was a very, very, very big assignment. We went to the schools, specific schools, I won't name them here, in the valley, in J&K, and 2,500 instructors were called from all over Northern Command for this training. That was followed by a similar stint in Eastern Command, where Army Commander General V.K. Singh invited us to modernize training for the instructors of Eastern Command. Following this, we were very, very happy. We said, okay, we've managed to contribute something significant to the armed forces, and we were very happy. But in 2011, we really got a surprise when the Indian Army headquarters sent a letter to me saying that I was going to be one of the privileged few to be inducted as an honorary officer in 116 TA. And that was when my life's dream came true, that I got to don the uniform. Following that, my journey as a TA officer, me and my wife got President's Award in 2019 for serving the Indian Army in close quarter battle and in reflex shooting, for inventing a new method of shooting called reflex shooting. Following induction, we wrote a book. That book was Encyclopedia of Close Quarter Battle Operations. It was the first kind of its book in the world where somebody had taken everything, all our research of the past 20 years, we had put it into encyclopedia, and we used all our life's money in producing that, that was about 12 lakhs at that time. And we gifted it free to the Indian Army, to the Indian Home Ministry. And it was a very proud moment for us, where we went bankrupt by that process. But then, we had contributed. And we were very fortunate that this book was found useful by these organizations. The book also went to FBI, and it went to Interpol, and it went to Buckingham Palace, and it found a proud place in their libraries. So, as a Territorial Army officer, I have had the privilege of visiting many units, being part of many functions, and being part of their, invitee for special guests as parades. I also was called by about 3 units of TA to train them. And that was also a big privilege for me, that I could do something for, my force. So this was, in short, my story of moving from a civilian into the TA and into the armed forces. My advice to people here, young people, I can see a lot of them sitting here. My advice is that if they want adventure, if they want patriotism, and if they want discipline, well, then the Indian Army is always there, right in front of you, which will recruit the best of the best, and you must definitely try to get in there. However, if you happen to get into other professions, and then you wish to pursue that profession, and at the same time, you want to don the uniform, then the Territorial Army is a fabulous option, because it offers age relaxation, it offers other relaxations, and it offers you the dual role of being a civilian as well as a soldier. So with that, I would like to end this. Jai Hind.
A very good afternoon to one and all present here. And sir, thanks for that invigorating story. But before I start, I'll request each one of you to take out your cell phones. Can you please do that for me? Everyone, please take out your cell phones. And when you look at your cell phone, the first thing you will notice that what you have in your hand, from the internet to the GPS, to the communication systems, was made by an army inventor or an army initiative. And that is what I'm trying to put forth. Armed forces are not an innovation concept, but a reality. So as you see on the slide, whether it's the microwave you use at home or the GPS and internet that you have in your hand, it was all created by the armed forces. Next slide. Innovation in the armed forces has moved. We have gone from stages where we are making vehicles like the American Humvee fighting vehicle to something as innovative as the Cobalt programming system, which is used and is one of the most secure programming languages in the world. Next slide. But armed forces and their requirements don't remain the same. Modern warfare is changing, as it has changed before. We started with swords, infantry, and spears. Then we moved on to aircrafts and machine guns. But the next era is different. The next era is of niche technologies, technologies like cyber, artificial intelligence, 3D printing. Next slide. This revolution is not something that's going to happen in 10, 20, 30 years. It is happening now. Artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, drones, these have changed warfare, and we need to change with them. Innovation is something that is imbibed in the warfighting capability. Any army that can innovate faster than the enemy is the one that wins the war. Next slide. So how do we innovate? I mean, conceptually, this sounds good, but where can we contribute? And where can each one of you contribute? Innovation is not something that is held in research institutes. It is something held in each and every one of us in our minds. So whether we can contribute in a concept, an equipment and technology, or a new way of doing things that are being done today, it's all brilliant ideas. It's all about execution. The Army requires R&D in 3 domains. One, we need experts who can tell what kind of technology needs to come. The armed forces are users, but at the same time, they need the latest technology to come from everyone that's sitting here, the people. The second, and probably the more important domain, is the evaluation of that technology. And that is where each one of us who decides to take this path forward can contribute. Next slide. So what you see, whether that is training and education, as some of the officers have done from close quarter battlefield, to innovation in AI, to robotics, to everything that you do. Every field in the world, from medicine to science, has a role in the armed forces. The second domain is training. And that is another area where each one of us needs to be ready. Next slide. The Territorial Army has been contributing in the domain of research and development for the Indian Army at all levels. We have had successful systems implemented across, from the valleys of Kupwara to the sea facing of southern India. We have made a mark. The Territorial Army innovation is something that is propelling the Indian Army to the next stage. There was an invigorating conversation before about what we can do and where the Indian Army transformation would go. It is us who needs to decide the next phase. Next slide. As part of this, there was the need felt from the organization to involve the Territorial Army in the innovation drive of the country. Next slide. So what is the Territorial Army Innovation Cell? The Indian Army, the Territorial Army in particular, has exceptionally skilled people. And the aim of the Territorial Army Innovation Cell is to provide a platform where they can contribute and create new technologies, bring the Indian Army to the forefront of being a digital fighting force. Next slide. The aim is to take innovation from foxholes to factories. There is a requirement for everyone to understand how the army fights, wherein Territorial Army and its citizen soldiers are the best equipped because they understand the tactics, the employment of the army, as well as technology. I myself, I'm an innovator. I work in the domain of artificial intelligence and robotics. When I joined the Territorial Army, I realized that there is a huge gap that we can fulfill. Next slide. The Territorial Army has already taken this path, I would say, leaps and bounds. Today, the Territorial Army has 5 Mandarin experts deployed in the forward areas of the Indian Army, translating and understanding our northern adversary. But is that all? No. Things like cybersecurity and having cyber experts, these are domains where the civil has much more expertise than the armed forces, and we can bring that expertise inside. We have expertise in domains like drones, and today we are developing systems which have been implemented for live operations, and that is what is giving us and our soldiers the edge as we go into battle. Next slide. The TA Army Innovation Cell is supported by the Army Design Bureau to ensure that we have synergy. The system is being established here in Delhi so that we have access to the cream of India's capability. Today, Indians lead from Microsoft to Adobe. There must be some reason that Indians are doing so well in these domains. If we are not able to tap their expertise, from the Anand Mahindras to the Baba Kalyanis, if we are not able to bring them into the domain of ensuring that the Indian Army is at the forefront of digital domain, then we have made a mistake. Next slide. We are not in a good neighborhood. Let's be honest. We are facing adversaries on all sides. So the responsibility of the nation's defense is not just on those who wear the uniform. Next slide. This can happen to any Indian city. Ukrainians sitting in Kiev, Israelis sitting on the Gaza border never expected something like this. So let's be real. When the enemies are at the gates, we will not be counting just on the men in uniform, but ensuring that each one of us also stands shoulder to shoulder with the armed forces in this struggle. Next slide. The previous Prime Minister of Israel today is leading his troops in the battlefield. And I ask each one of you to think, if we go to war, would you be there to make a difference? And I'm glad to hear that. Next slide. The Indian Army and the Territorial Army in particular would stand shoulder to shoulder if each one of you make an effort in your respective domain and think how you can contribute to the nation. I'm an example of making this a reality, and so are there many others. The nation needs each one of you to stand in its times of tribulations. So I ask each one to take an oath that whenever the nation calls upon, you are ready to make a difference. Thank you, and Jai Hind.
So we have the 4 or 5 speakers who have spoken here, and each one of them from a different department, and given you an array of what the entire spectrum of Territorial Army is and what it is capable of, as well as what opportunities it offers. We are now open to any suggestions, any comments, or any questions that the audience may have.
Sir, so my question is, sir, I have worked very closely with the TA battalions in the Kashmir Valley, and there is just no doubt in the very high level of professionalism which the TA battalions have, sir. There are people out there in civil who want to don the uniform of army. There is a requirement by TA battalions of able-bodied men, and seeing the number of battalions and the tasks which they can perform, there is definitely a requirement of expanding the number of battalions. But still, sir, there seems to be a divide between the knowledge which the civilians possess who are willing to come and join the Territorial Army. But the popularity of the TA is somewhere not there to that extent where it is required, sir. So my question to you, ADG sir, is that what can we do to bridge this gap, make TA a very, very popular option so that more and more people can come, do their part of duty and be available in the civil street. So whenever requirement is there, they can be called upon and do their task, sir.
Firstly, thank you for your question, but and I must appreciate that in the first part of your question, you alluded to the fact that the Territorial Army is doing wonderfully well both in the valley as well as wherever it is. And contrary to the perception that you were articulating, the Territorial Army does still remain a very viable option. And whenever we have gone for recruitment, be it in the JCOs or other ranks structure, as well as for the officers, we have found a very, very forthcoming response. In fact, we just went in for 2 or rather 3 recruitment drives in the officer cadre. One is as spoken to you by Maj Jai. We as a nation were facing a problem of having adequately competent Mandarin or Chinese speaking experts. So we went in for a drive and we had an overwhelming response. We were able to induct some officers and we have a huge amount waiting. In fact, that became a very big support for the Indian Army. Similarly, now we are going in for a drive for technical or technological experts. And again, this is going to open shortly, and I'm very confident that we are going to have a good response, because already we have some queries. But for the normal induction into the Territorial Army, we have had 2 rounds, and in both the rounds, there has been a huge kind of response from the academia as well as the normal student body. That means people who are in the niche domains as well as who have completed their graduation from normal colleges, and they are very, very enthusiastic about coming. In fact, this year onwards, we are going in for an online entrance exam, that is the PIB, pre-induction kind of exam, to which the recruitment drive will be announced shortly, and advertisement will be coming out. And I'm very confident through media like this, the Territorial Army and its organization is going to get more and more publicity and more support and more enthusiastic response to the call when it gives. Thank you.
Sir, just one more part to it, sir. As of now, I think we have got only 41 battalions, sir, if I'm not wrong, sir. Sir, is there any plan of expansion of the battalion, sir? Because when we make the rear area security plans, the TA is a very, very essential component of that, sir. And every time in making the plans, we find that there is always a shortfall of the TA troops for carrying out the rear area security, sir. So is there a plan of expansion of the number of battalions, sir?
I will answer this again. There is a definite plan of TA playing an important role in its support to the Indian Army. As was spoken to you all by Brigadier Dahiya, there is a plan of TIization of our logistics echelons as a start. And soon there will be actual reality of that probably happening very shortly. And apart from that, as very rightly brought out by you, a possibility of a further expansion of TA definitely exists. And in a definite manner, emboldened or rather encouraged by the response of the TA or the contribution of the TA by to the state governments. Many state governments are coming forward. In fact, even the NDRF has come forward, and there is a clamour to have TA forces for disaster relief, for ecological management, and also for the Clean Ganga missions, etc. So there are definitely, I would say, possibilities of this happening very really, in a larger manner very soon. Yeah, any other question or any other comment or contribution anybody wants to make is most welcome. Yeah. If not, thank you very much for a very patient listening to the audience, and I must compliment each speaker or panelist who was here for having spoken so confidently, so well, and articulated the concept of the Territorial Army and all the opportunities it offers, both to the nation as well as the citizens who we are very willing to absorb in the Territorial Army. And I close this session. Thank you very much.